Good morning, Math A students. This is Mrs. Stengel. Sorry I can't be with you today. You're going to have a substitute day. You're going to be watching my recorded videos for lesson 2.3b and 2.3c today. And then we're going to be having you work on homework 2.3b and 2.3c today in class after the lessons. So find your Google Classroom period 3 or period 5. Click on the classwork stream, and I need you to find the attendance question for today, which is October 18th. So go ahead and submit your attendance question in Google Classroom. Then I want you to scroll down. We're not going to do a starters today. We're going to complete it next time. So we're skipping the starters for today and student spotlight. We'll do that next time. And I want you to click on lesson 2.3b in your Google Classroom. So as you do that, lesson 2.3 can be edited with Kami or the Google Classroom app. I'm going to be using my stylus to edit with Kami right in Google Classroom app, and I want you to follow along with me on your copy in Google Classroom. So today's lesson is 2.3b about operations with positive and negative fractions. We're going to be finding the sum or the difference for each. So we're going to start with fractions that have common denominators. So for problem number 1, it says negative 6 over 17 plus 1 over 17. So when we have common denominators, we want to keep the denominator the same and just combine the numerators. So I'm going to add, turn my stylus is on. I'm going to add negative 6 plus 1. And I'm going to keep the denominator the same. So I'm going to keep the denominator 17. So again, when you have a common denominator, you keep it the same and you just combine your numerators together. So this is going to become negative 5 on the numerator, and I'm going to keep the denominator 17 on the bottom. That's the final answer. It's in simplest form because we check to see if we can reduce, but 5 and 17 are both prime numbers and they are not able to reduce. So I'm just going to box up my final answer. For number 2, remember, same rules apply with our keep, switch, switch method. So I'm going to keep the 25 over 9 exactly the same. And the reason why I'm going to switch my negative and a subtraction to an addition is because we always add the opposite. So I'm going to rewrite my expression as addition. I didn't have to do that for problem number 1 because it was already an addition problem. But if ever anytime I see subtraction, I want to change it to an adding the opposite. So I'm going to add together my numerators, 25 plus 7, and I keep the denominator the same, 9. So I get 32 over 9, or 3 and 5 ninths. Either one of these is perfectly acceptable because I know that I have reduced it to its simplest form because 3 and 5 ninths, 5 and 9 have nothing in common, so I can't reduce that anymore. All right, the next problem, I want to change to improper if it's not in that form. So I'm going to write change to improper because right now it's a mixed number. So I want to make sure that all my fractions are improper. So I'm going to start with 7 over 11. I don't need to change that one. I do want to add the opposite here. I do like to do keep, switch, switch on problems that are subtraction. So I'm going to change this to a negative 17 over 11. The reason why I changed it to 17 is because I did 1 times 11. So I multiplied 1 and 11, and then I added 6. So it became 17 over 11, and then I just added the negative up at the top. So this is the same type of thing. You can do 7 plus negative 17 in the numerator, and I can keep my denominator the same. I can keep it 11. So 7 plus negative 17 is negative 10, and I keep my denominator the same, 11. So let's just review. If the denominators are the same, you can just add the numerator and keep the denominator the same. So I'm going to write a little note here. So keep denominator add numerator. All right, so those are just my notes to myself, and you can write those down as well. For number 4, the denominators are not the same. So we have to find what's called the lowest common denominator. It's called the LCD, and I'll write down what that means. It's the lowest common denominator. Can't fit the whole word there, so I'm just going to abbreviate it. So finding the lowest common denominator means that I'm going to look at my numbers 3 and 4 in the denominator. I'm going to find the lowest number that they both evenly go into, which is 12. So I'm going to rewrite my denominators both with a 12 in the bottom because I multiplied 3 times 4. So the first fraction, I'm going to multiply by 4. The second fraction, I'm going to multiply by 3. So the first fraction becomes a -8. Be careful you don't lose your negative signs. And the second fraction becomes 3. So now I have -8 plus 3, which is -5 over 12, keeping that denominator 12. All right, for the next one, I'm going to change my fractions to have a denominator of 6. So I'm going to make the first fraction 2 6 because I multiplied it by 2. The second fraction already has a 6 in the denominator, so I'm just going to keep the 6. And then I'm going to get -3 on the numerator and 6 on the denominator, which simplifies to -1 over 2. All right, for number 6, same thing. I'm going to find a common denominator. I'm also going to keep switch because I do see 2 subtractions on that one. If you don't want to do keep switch on just one negative, that's fine, because I could have changed this to plus a -5. I'm still going to get the same answer. 2 minus 5 is the same thing as 2 plus a -5. Sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't. Just depends on what's easier for me in the problem. What's easier for me in number 6 is to change those two to a positive. So I'm going to change this to 2/3 plus 3/2. Then I'm going to find a common denominator of 6. So the first fraction becomes 4 6, and the second fraction becomes 9 6, which will simplify to 13 over 6 or 2 and 1 6. Either one is acceptable. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Can box this all up. Oops. All right, problem number 7 says 2 and 3/4 minus 1 and 2/3. So I will find a common denominator of 12. I will times this by 2 and 9/12. This one I will times by 4. So I will get 1 and 8/12. All right, so I'm going to subtract my numbers. I'm going to do 2 minus 1. So I'll write that here. 2 minus 1. That's going to end up becoming 1. And then I'm going to do 9/12 minus 8/12. So you have to subtract them. Think of it as like two different problems here. You're adding these two together. So I subtract my numbers. 2 minus 1 is 1. 9 minus 8 is also 1. So my final answer would be 1 and 1/12. So for problem number 8, I'm going to do keep switch. So I have -3 and 5/7 plus 1 and 1/2. So I'm going to find a common denominator of 14. So I will multiply the first fraction by 2. So it'll become -3 and 10/14. And the second fraction I'm going to multiply by 7. So it becomes 1 and 7/14. All right, so this is one of them is negative, one of them is positive. So I'm going to do -3 plus 1, which is going to become -2. And then I'm also going to subtract -10 and 7. So that would give me -3 or just 3. 10 minus 7 is 3 over 14. I only need one negative in the front of the problem. So this becomes -2 and 3/14. All right, number 9, I have -4/3 plus -5, -1 and 5/12. So I'm going to multiply this first fraction by 4 to get -16 over 12. Plus, I have -1 and 5/12. All right, so they're both negative, so I'm just going to add them together, and I'm going to get -1. And then if I add 16 and 5 together, let me add 16 plus 5, and I'm going to keep that over 12. I will get -1 and 16 and 21 twelfths. Okay, we can't leave it like that though, because 21 is larger than 12. So I'm going to write it as another whole number added to -1. And 21 minus 12 is 9. And then one more step, because 9/12 can be simplified to negative, oops, I'm running out of room. The final answer is -2. Oops, hold on. Oops, there we go. -2 and 3/4. I ran out of room on that one. Sorry about that. All right. Number 10 says -0.5 minus 2/3. So we want to change decimals to fractions. So I know that -0.5 is easy to write as a fraction. It's -1/2. And I'm going to add that to a -2/3. I like to do the keep switch switch when I see subtraction sometimes. So I'm going to change the denominators to 6. I'm going to make the first one -3/6. And -2/3, I'm going to make that -4/6. So now, since both of the signs are the same, I'm going to add them together and get -7/6. I'm going to leave it like that. But you can put -1 and 1/6 if you'd like. All right, this next one, I have -7/3 plus, I'm going to do keep switch switch with those two negatives. 0.75 as a fraction is 3/4. So now I'll find a common denominator. I'll multiply the first fraction by 4. So I'll get -28/12. And the second fraction I'll multiply by 3, and I will get 9/12. All right, so -28 plus 9. Let me make sure that looks like a 9. It got a little bit scribbly there. So that's a 9. So -28 plus 9 would be -19. And I'm going to keep my denominator the same as 12. All right, and this last one, if I'm taking anything away from 0, it just makes my answer negative. So I'm just going to write that my answer is -1.75. All right, let's go on to the next page. Make sure if you're in Kami, you just scroll down. If you're in Google Classroom app, click the right arrow, but don't save until the very end. For number 13, it says Ron hiked 8 1/3 miles. After resting, he hiked back along the same trail for 3 1/4 miles. How many more miles does Ron need to hike to return to his starting point? So, how many more miles means we need to figure out what is the difference between 8 3/4 and 3 1/4. Since they have the same denominators, I'm just going to do 8 minus 3 is 5, 3 minus 1 is 2, and I keep my denominator the same. My answer would be 5 1/2 more miles. All right, so this next one says temperatures for 5 days in Minneapolis are given in degrees Fahrenheit below. Temperatures for the following week are expected to be approximately 12 degrees lower each day than the given temperatures. What are the highest and the lowest? So if I look at this data set right here, I have -22.5 as my lowest, and I have -19.5 as my highest. So for my new high score, or my new high temperature score, will be, I'm going to take my -19.5, and it says it's approximately 12 degrees lower than that. So I'm going to subtract 12 and get -31.5, because -19 plus -12 is -31. And my new low, I'm going to take my -22.5 and subtract 12, and I'm going to get -34.5. Because -22 minus 12 more is -34. Last one for this assignment, it says a football team loses 4.5 yards on their first play. On the next play, they gain 2.5 yards. what is the overall increase or decrease? So if you lose yards, it's thought of as a negative number. If you gain yards, it's thought of as a positive number. So since both of these have the same denominator, I'm just going to add -4 plus 2, which is -2. And then since one of these is negative and one of these is positive, the 1/2s are going to cancel. So this is just an overall decrease of 2 yards. All right, go ahead and save and turn in this assignment right now on Google Classroom so that way you don't forget to do this. So click Save, turn in if you're in the Google Classroom app, or if you're in Kami, just click Add your attachment from your Google Drive because it's saved automatically in your Google Drive, and then turn in this assignment. All right, the next assignment that we're going to be working on is lesson 2.3C. So this next lesson is about operations with rational numbers. So we're going to be multiplying and dividing. So I want to get it to load. So while it's trying to load, I'm going to have you go back into your Google Classroom and your lesson and make sure that you have submitted it and turned it in. I'm going to load it again. Just give me 1 second because sometimes Kami is a little bit tricky and it just needs to be loaded again. So hopefully this is giving you enough time to turn in your lesson. And then we're going to be working through the next lesson, 2.3C, together with rational operations. Hopefully it will load. And then we can go through the next lesson together. So the next lesson is right here, lesson 2.3C in Google Classroom. So you want to click on that link and open it up in either Kami or the Google Classroom app. So I'm going to be opening it up with Kami. And it should put me right back where we were. Perfect, lesson 2.3C. So now we're going to multiply and divide our rational numbers. So remember, multiply, we're just going to multiply straight across. So we're going to multiply the numerators. I'm going to multiply -1 times -4. That's the two numbers in the numerator. And then in the denominator, I'm going to multiply 2 and 5. I really don't need all those parentheses, but I'm just showing you multiplication uses parentheses. That's why they're there. So -1 times -4 is a +4. We're going to be using our rules for multiplication. And 2 times 5 is 10. So we do need to make sure that we reduce all of our fractions. So make sure that you reduce after you multiply. So 4/10 can be divided by 2, and we're going to reduce it to 2/5. So we divided top and bottom by 2. That is how we got to 2/5. So I like it if you change decimals into fractions. It makes it easier to work with. So -1 1/2 times 6, -6, sorry. So when we multiply fractions, we actually have to change them to improper. So we multiply them correctly. All right, so we're just going to multiply straight across. I'm going to multiply -3 times -6, which is positive 18, and 2 times 1, which is 2. And then that will reduce to 9. All right, for the next one, -3/4 times 12. So I'm going to multiply -3 times 12. And really, there's nothing in the denominator. So it's really like multiplying 4 times 1 in the denominator. So you get -36 on the numerator and +4 on the denominator. And that will simplify to -9. All right, moving on to the next problem. -3. Think of it again as like -3 over 1. If it's if it's an integer, you can always put it over 1 to make it a fraction, times by 5 over 4. If the parentheses are confusing you, you can just drop them because multiplication can be used as a dot symbol in the middle. So -3 times 5 would be -15. And 1 times 4 is 4 on the denominator. So we can leave it like that, or you can write it as -3 3/4. Either one is fine. I'll just go ahead and box this one up because you're probably used to putting it as a mixed number. So the difference between multiplying fractions and adding fractions is that when we multiply, we don't have to find a common denominator. We just multiply straight across. So I'm going to write that just as a little hint up at the top. Just multiply across. All right, and then I'm going to change negative 0.5 into negative 1/2, and negative 1/4 is already a fraction. So negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1, and 2 times 4 is 8. And we have 2/3 times negative 0.6, which is 6/10. And then 2 times negative 6 is negative 12. 3 times 10 is 30. And then I can simplify that fraction to negative 2/5 because I divided by 6. If you want to write that in, if you're wondering how I got that, divide top and bottom by 6 to get to 2/5. All right, use your understanding of division of fractions and integers to find the following quotients. So when we divide fractions, we're going to be multiplying by the reciprocal. So instead of dividing, we multiply. So we're going to write this as keep, change, flip. I call it KCF or KFC, whatever you like to call it, but it's keep, change, flip. You probably have learned this in elementary school, keep, change, flip. So we keep the 3 exactly the way it is. We change division to multiplication and we flip the fraction. So instead of negative 1/4, it'll be negative 4/1. So we can turn 3 into a fraction by putting 1 underneath it, not a, I apologize, not a 3, a 1. And then multiply straight across and get negative 12/1, or we just write that as negative 12. We don't really are worried about the 1 underneath. All right, so we're going to keep negative 2 exactly the same. We're going to multiply because we're going to change division to multiplication, and then we're going to flip our fraction to negative 3/2. So I'm going to change this to a fraction by putting a 1 underneath it. So negative 2 times negative 3 is 6. 1 times 2 is 2, and then 6 divided by 2 is 3. All right, last one on this page. I keep negative 2/3. I change division to multiplication, and instead of 0.5, I'm going to write it as 1/2. So I'm going to change this to 2/1 and multiply straight across. Negative 4/3. It's a 4, sorry. And negative 4/3 is also negative 1 1/3. All right, for the next page, we have 3/5 divided by negative 1.5. So I'm going to scroll down, or you're going to click on the right arrow to get to the next page. So we have negative 3/5, keep. So again, keep, change, flip still applies when you see division. Negative 1 1/2 is really just negative 3/2. So when I multiply by the reciprocal, I'm going to be multiplying by 2 over negative 3. So I have negative 3 times 2, which is negative 6, and then 5 times negative 3 is negative 15. Two negatives equal a positive, so this becomes positive 6/15. And then if I divide top and bottom by 3, I will get 2/5 as my final answer. Right now I have keep, change, flip again. So keep the 2/5, change it to multiplication. And then since this was negative 2/1, I'm going to change it to 1 over negative 2. So I will get 2 times 1, which is 2. 5 times negative 2 is negative 10. And negative 2, or 2 over negative 10, can be rewritten. Oops, I'm sorry. I scroll down. Go back up a little bit. Sorry about that. So we have, I'm going to move the negative up on the top because you can put the negative anywhere you want in your fraction. It doesn't have to be in the denominator. If there's only 1, you can decide where you want to put it. So I'm going to divide this fraction by 2, and I will get negative 1/5. All right, this last one for division, I have to change to improper if I want to do division. So first I'm going to change this to improper. So I'm going to change negative 2 and 3/4. I'm going to write that as negative 11/4 because 2 times 4 is 8 and 8 plus 3 is 11. Then I'm going to change division to multiplication, and then I'm going to flip this to a negative 4/3. So negative 11 times negative 4 is positive 44. 4 times 3 is 12. Now 44 over 12 is divisible by least 2, so we can start with that. So 44 divided by 2 is 22, and 12 divided by 2 is 6. We can keep going again and divide by 2 again. So we could have divided by 4 altogether, and that simplifies to 11 over 3. I'm just going to leave it like that, or you could write 3 and 2/3. All right, now let's write an expression to solve each word problem. Answer the question in a complete sentence. Greg sets his watch for the correct time on Monday. Exactly 1 week later, he finds that his watch has lost 3 and 1/4 minutes. If his watch continues to lose time at the same rate, his watch will be incorrect by how many minutes after 8 days? So we have a loss of 3 and 1/4, and then after 8 days would be a multiple of 8. So we are going to multiply negative 3 and 1/4 by 8. I'm going to turn negative 3 and 1/4 into improper fraction. So 3 times 4 is 12. Again, we multiply the diagonal, we add the numerator. So that's 13 over 4, and then I add the negative, times 8 over 1. I don't have to keep change flip because this is a multiplication problem. So I just multiply straight across. I'll multiply negative 13 by 8, and then I'll multiply 4 times 1. So negative 13 times 8 is negative 104, and 4 times 1 is 4. And then 4 goes into 104 exactly 26 times. So this becomes negative 26. So he will be slow, his watch will be slow by 26 minutes. We'll write his watch will be slow by 26 minutes. All right, number 14. Chloe wants to divide a 3/4 pound box of Chex Mix into small bags. Each bag holds 1/12 of the Chex Mix. How many bags of Chex Mix can Chloe fill? So we're going to divide 3/4 by 1/12. So this is keep, change, flip. I have 3/4 times 12 over 1. So 3 times 12 and then 4 times 1. You just go straight across when you multiply. So 3 times 12 is 36. 4 times 1 is 4. And then that goes evenly into, 36 is divisible by 4 9 times. So Chloe can fill 9 bags. I'm just going to write 9 bags over here. All right, and number 15 says, of the students on the track team, 1/5 do jumping events. Of the students who do jumping events, 2/3 do the long jump. What fraction of the students on the track team do the long jump? So I have 1/5 of 2/3. Of means multiply. So anytime you guys see the word of in a word problem, you're going to think multiplication. So multiply straight across. 1 times 2 is 2. 5 times 3 is 15. So it's 2/15 of the track team does long jump. Can't fit it all in here. Okay. And this last one says only 1/5 of students are driven by their parents to school. Of those who do not get driven by their parents, 3/16 ride their bicycles to school. What fraction of the students ride their bicycles to school? So we have 1/5 is driven. So let me write that down because we're actually looking for not driven. If 1/5 is driven, then the ones that are not driven is 4/5. So I want to know what fraction of the students ride their bicycles, that the not driven by their parent part. So I'm going to actually look at the 4/5 fraction, not the 1/5, and I'm going to multiply it by 3/16 who ride their bicycles to school. So I'm going to multiply straight across. Now I'm going to multiply 4 times 3, which is 12. And then I'm going to multiply 5 times 16, which is 80. So I have 12 over 80. Now those are at least both divisible by 4. So let's divide top and bottom. Oops, I'm sorry. Divide top and bottom by 4. And you will get 3 over 20. So 3 over 20 of the students ride their bike. I'll write it over here. 3 over 20 of the students Ride bikes. All right, go ahead and save your lesson and turn it in into Google Classroom just like we did before. So you want to either save it in Google Classroom app and then click turn in, or you want to use Kami and upload your work as an attachment to Google Classroom. Okay, so let's go back to our class slides. Now that we've covered the video lessons for lessons 2.3b and 2.3c, just wanted to remind you what's due today. Today, you had to turn in your lesson 2.3a, homework 2.3a, and your module 2 quiz corrections from last week that we worked on Friday. And by next class, you should have both of these lessons that we completed today uploaded. And right now, you're going to be working on homework 2.3b and 2.3c in Google Classroom. You have a test coming up October 25th, so we have a while for that. So make sure in Google Classroom that you're clicking on homework 2.3c. Also next to homework 2.3c is the key if you want to check your work, but notice the key is only the answers. It doesn't have any work. So you're going to have to show how you added your fractions to get a common denominator. And then in homework 2.3b as well, you're going to have to show work on how you got your answers. But use the key to help remind you guys to check your answers and make sure you're doing it correctly. Okay, that'll be it for today. I will see you guys on Wednesday. Enjoy your wave time. You're working on homework 2.3b and 2.3c, and I'll see you on Wednesday. Thank you guys.